that Grand Admiral Thrawn is missing from your delegation. Any word on when he will be able to participate in the Shadow Council?
With respect, our one hope for success relies upon the secrecy of his return.
Captain, secrets are my stock in trade. I hear whispers from one end of the galaxy to another, and never a word of Thrawn. Long live the Empire.
Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Hey there guys, Unofficial Star Wars here. Hope you're all doing well and welcome to my The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 7 breakdown video. We are going to be discussing all of the different Easter eggs and things that you might have missed throughout this episode, as well as just an overall in general review of this amazing episode of The Mandalorian. So that there being said, let's go ahead and hop right on into it. In this video, we will be taking a read from IGN.com and what they have to say with their article. I'll have their article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. I'll also be discussing a number of my own fan theories a little bit here and there throughout this video, so stay tuned for those as well. The disparate tribes of Mandalore unite for a common purpose in the penultimate episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and it feels like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have also finally pulled together all of its highly different narratives and tonal threads ahead of the finale, with all of the different, characters and stories that they set up this previous season. And there's a little something for everyone in Episode 7 as well, which skillfully combines the cuteness of Grogu, the political drama of Bo-Katan, Imperial scheming, and plenty of action, while pushing the plot towards its conclusion for Season 3, as next week will be the finale already with Episode 8. The director of this episode as well, Rick Famuyiwa, blows it out of the ballpark as well, and he has one of the best directional track records on The Mandalorian, directing previous episodes of The Mandalorian as well, and he doesn't disappoint in this episode titled The Spies, which kicks off in a Blade Runner-like underbelly of Coruscant, where Elia Kane lets Moff Gideon know his pirates have failed to retake Navarro, as we finally learn and discover that the Imperials were the ones that were behind the pirates and the invasion caused on Navarro a couple of episodes ago now. Carson Teva, the New Republic pilot, was obviously right that the various threads of Navarro has faced are all at the end of the day actually connected, and it's not surprising that Moff Gideon wanted to take back his old power based after escaping the New Republic custody as well. The Imperial probe droid looks appropriately menacing here as well. It felt overly menacing at that. I don't know why it looks so scary, serving as a perfect intro for an even more intimidating Giancarlo Esposito's return as Moff Gideon in this episode finally, last previously seeing him in the Mandalorian Season 2 finale almost 2 years ago. And so, like the Legion of Doom, the Shadow Council provides a way for the galaxy's biggest villains to come together and chat about their pet projects and to share goals, a conversation laden with references, and a clear setup for the Ahsoka show as well. The scene introduces the imminent return of Grand Admiral Thrawn through his top lieutenant, Captain Gillard Pellion, who we see in a number of comics, making his first jump from the page to the screen. Hopefully potentially playing more roles in the future, and also for the Ahsoka show I think would be pretty cool. This whole gathering of all of these Imperial warlords are called what is the Shadow Council. We see one of the characters named Commandant Hux, the father of the First Order's General Hux, who we see later in the sequel trilogy, who in this case is being played by his brother actually, Brian Gleason, and we learn that he is banking on cloning and a necromancy to resurrect the Emperor, so he's more focused on the cloning aspects of the Empire and trying to bring back Palpatine, furthering tying this season into the sequel trilogy, something that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have teased that the Mandoverse will eventually lead up to, with its 30-year gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. Dave Filoni has launched the modern era of Star Wars television by making the most of George Lucas's poorly received prequel films with Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Now he seems to have the inevitable task of having to find a coherent and meaningful narrative to spin out of the mess Disney made of the sequel trilogy overall. continuing the work he did on Star Wars Resistance to explain the rise of the First Order. He's the only person I'd trust to do it personally, and I can't wait for his Mandoverse movie as well. This extended universe isn't big enough for two heirs to the Empire, and Gideon wants to take the title while Thrawn's missing in action. It's surprising that Din Djarin and Bo-Katan didn't think to warn the other Mandalorians about this huge Imperial fleet they encountered outside of Mandalore, just focusing on the nasty threats on the surface of the planet though, however. It also feels like this is the exact sort of mission the Armorer shouldn't be on, since her job as a keeper of the culture would be really important in case this goes wrong. But presumably she does see this as a holy mission, and it's her job to witness it. And at that, also, couldn't Bo-Katan and Din have sent word back to Navarro that they were going to show up with a huge Imperial fleet? Seems like it would have been a nice courtesy, considering the people there are still rebuilding from their last time a capital ship had appeared in the atmosphere above their city. Still, it's an excuse to show just how cool the mythosaur on the underbelly of this Star Cruiser looks. And so, in a pretty funny twist on the whole attempting of bringing back IG-11, the Anzalians of Navarro have hollowed the killer droid out to provide a host for a small creature like themselves, or in this case, for Baby Yoda, Grogu, making them feel even more similar to the Aquarians that we see in the Men in Black movie. It's an opportunity for a charming callback to one of the season's most adorable moments, as the mechanic gives Grogu a wide berth to avoid being squeezed by the bad baby again, and Grogu is way too excited to be able to walk around in his new mech suit. I also find it way more, I think, fascinating at that there as well, considering almost 6+ months ago here on the channel we discussed this as a rumor and a leak for the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, that we would see the return of IG-11 as some type of mechanical mech droid for Grogu to sit in and use, and seeing that come to fruition and actually happen is beyond amazing. It is unclear why the Anzalians equipped the robot with the ability to just say yes and no. It's weirdly reminiscent of the toy monkey in the Black Mirror episode of Black Museum, the show, and Din understandably has a lot of regret about the arrangement. Kids, they grow up so fast. Grogu's starting to come into his own as a character rather than a plot device in narrative, and it feels like everyone, including the writers, is still trying to figure out the best form for that to take. This Krang-like robot body is deeply goofy to an extent, but I think it's really cool as well, and it has its uses, allowing Grogu to actually take on the Jedi role of a peacekeeper, then the biggest jerks from each group of the Mandalorians inevitably getting into a fight, that there being Axe-Woofs and Paz Vizsla, R.I.P. Paz. Visually, it works better than having Grogu zip around with his force powers, but the hovering pram remains the best way for mobilizing this character in those terms, and maybe it's because that's just the way that he was introduced to us. The droid body feels like exactly the sort of thing that we will get blown up in a rescue attempt, which is a good thing for the show and Din's sanity, as we see at the end of the episode, him being captured by Moff Gideon. The whole altercation between Paz Vizsla and Axe-Woofs serves as multiple purposes, delivering some solid action while also developing both of their characters to an extent, and the fragile connective tissue keeping this overall force of the two clans together. Bo-Katan should know better than to think that Din taught Grogu anything resembling conflict resolution skills after seeing him trying to kick his way out of every negotiation last episode. But Grogu does provide the perfect resolution for the fight by allowing both of the stubborn warriors to save face without direct involvement of another Mandalorian. Which is really where things could get really messy, because then you would have a whole civil war between these two Mandalorian clans to a point. Bo-Katan's forces revendize with a group of Mandalorian survivors living on a pirate boat type of looking ship that's a bit of a fusion of what we see in Star Wars Rebels with Captain Rex's tank and the Rebels, and something out of Mad Max. As seen in Din's pledge of loyalty to Bo-Katan, this season is much more about the princess than it is about him, and depending on how you look at that, that can be something fortunate or unfortunate, and in my own thoughts and opinions personally, I was all for it. More Bo-Katan. I thought it was really, really cool. Of course, I grew up with the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, so seeing her in those shows was really awesome. To see her coming to live action last season in The Mandalorian was really awesome, but now I think I'm at a point where I think I've had a little bit too much of Bo-Katan, and I'd like the story to get a little bit more to Din Djarin and Grogu. But please do give Bo-Katan her own Disney Plus show. I think that would be beyond amazing. And Katie Sackhoff is a phenomenal actress, both narrating the voice of Bo-Katan and those animated shows as I had mentioned, and also bringing this character to live action. Anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below overall. Having Bo-Katan have a lot more screen time than Din and Grogu, what do you think about that? Do you like it? Do you not like it? I would love to hear what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Has it taken away from the season? This new group of Mandalorian survivors provides room for more revelation about the guilt that haunts Bo-Katan and just how much of a monster Moff Gideon really is. Katie Sackhoff's character of Bo-Katan continues to impress in these scenes though, truly seeming to bear the weight of the past as she tries to redeem herself and her people of both and all Mandalorian clans. For my Breaking Bad fans out there, this is the same actor that plays Skinny Pete in those shows for El Camino, Better Call Saul, and Breaking Bad. We originally covered this as a rumor a couple of months ago, almost 6+ months ago at this point, so to see it actually happen was really cool. And it is all the more reason to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to be notified and be up to date with all of your Star Wars news, leaks, rumors, theories, and breakdowns that we cover and talk about here on the channel. And it is a good thing all of the sick and wounded survivors of this Mandalorian clan could be evacuated before a spectacular monster resembling a big dinosaur-like beast. Something that actually reminds me a lot of the Krayt Dragon that we see in the opening, the premiere for Season 2 of The Mandalorian, that Cobb Vanth and Din Djarin take down, as this big monstrous beast emerges suddenly and randomly at that from beneath the blasted surface of Mandalore. I had originally expected something like this to break up the fight between Paz and Axe, but instead we get a character showing agency, that being Grogu in the IG Now 12 suit. And it was, of course, still enjoyable, a wild encounter within the incredibly dangerous of Mandalore and Star Wars that just pushes the Mandalorians further into their quest, ushering them into the mines of Mandalore now. An underlying theme throughout the episode is the different way of the Children of the Watch and the survivors of the Purge of Mandalore react to seeing the planet in its current state, based on their personal connection to the way it was before. It's sort of an ancient, distant homeworld for one group and a highly personal tragedy for the other, but both are still united in their grief for what they had lost when surviving the wreckage from their ship or walking amongst the ruins of the Great Forge in these mines of Mandalore. It's the sort of development that would have been better if the two groups had come together a little bit earlier in the season, but still builds on the previously hinted at friction between Bo-Katan and Din based on their own very different experiences with that and with being a Mandalorian. A little bit of a theory of mine here is that we see that this episode is titled The Spies. Of course, we see Elia Kane at the beginning of the episode in the underworlds of Coruscant here, contacting Moff Gideon and posing as a spy under the New Republic and working with them. However, this episode is entitled The Spy. It's titled The Spies. It's plural, so that would be hinting that there's more than just one spy and more than just Elia Kane. Maybe somebody amongst them. There has to be a reason for this, and there has to be somebody that's in the know, somebody that knew that Moff Gideon was already on and what was Mandalore. And to me, the survivor clan of Mandalorians, the ones that had stayed on the planet even after the Great Purge, seem a little bit fishy. They bring them straight to the Great Forge and they know where everything is at that, but if they've been down there before, why didn't they know about Moff Gideon? Or my other theory is that, of course, we see Axe Woofs and the rest of the Night Owls in the previous episode working as bounty hunter mercenaries, essentially, so maybe were they at one point hired to work with Moff Gideon? Anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. The bit of extra character development for Paz Vizsla this episode adds to more pathos at that for his notable sacrifice when the Mandalorians walk right into Gideon's trap, breaking out an awesome action-packed scene here and fight sequence. These are the third variations of Dark Troopers that we learn about. We see the first variation in the Bad Batch Star Wars animated show, of course all in canon, and we later see the second variation in the second season of The Mandalorian. So these guys would be in these Dark Trooper suits, essentially, as a third variation, something that there's actual people wearing them. Now, whether or not these guys that are wearing these suits are actual people or they're clones is something that's up in the air, because we see Moff Gideon on this planet, presumably at the beginning of the episode, as I had mentioned, so maybe as he walks past these cloning tubes that maybe aren't for Snoke or for Palpatine, would much rather be for these just normal, like Jango Fett-like clones. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. The question is asked though, however, after falling into Gideon's trap, why do they largely sit in their prison, only taking action when Gideon flies off like a triumphant Bond villain, not waiting to stick around to see if his henchmen can actually seal the deal. Still, after how easily the Mandalorians took down the pirates on Navarro, they needed a suitable challenge, and Gideon's one of a new and few forces in the galaxy that can deliver that to the Mandalorians. He kind of announces his whole deal, that he wants to be something of all of the different big major civilizations, Jedi, New Republic, everything out there, what the Empire was, and bringing out the best of each and every one of those ancient civilizations to a point, and making him the best out of all of them essentially. And we also learn at the beginning of the episode that he wants to replace Thrawn to a point. Now, Paz Vizsla makes a stirring last stand, keeping Bo-Katan from trying to rescue him, even as his signature gun overheats into a slag. It's totally orange. It's a classic Star Wars one-upmanship that he could take down seemingly all of Gideon's troopers before the Prepatorian Guards show up. These red Prepatorian Guards didn't do much besides looking cool in The Last Jedi. I mean, they did have a few cool sequences in action, so hopefully their appearance in The Mandalorian will provide a way to develop them as a bit of more of threats, and to why and the way that Filoni did for Darth Maul in the Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels. Giancarlo Esposito seems really to be enjoying vamping it all up, whether walking in an ominous red light silhouetting his Dark Troopers, monologuing about why he's the true heir to the Mandalore, or taking great care to capture Din Djarin, presumably making sure he personally pays for his defeat at the end of Season 2. He definitely has his quandaries with Din Djarin and the rest of the Mandalorians, having it really out for these guys. Maybe we'll finally get to see Pedro Pascal's face in the season finale, while he's being tortured, or something like that, to Moff Gideon and his crew. And with the director, Rick Famuyiwa, at the helm again for next week's finale, and also being the director of this episode, we're likely going to get another meaty episode entirely focused on Mandalore, with a Matar to the cause, a captive to rescue, and some really fierce opposition in the form of a Beskar-wearing Moff Gideon protected by 3 members of the Prepatorian Guards. It feels like all the pieces of this time's slow and inconsistent season may have finally come together for an epic conclusion in next week's episode. I'd also like to quickly mention that we see Moff Gideon in this black suit, a Mandalorian suit at that, and he's wearing like these Maul horns, Mandalorians, an Imperial Mandalorian. I've discussed time in and time out here on the channel into the regards of the 3rd season of The Mandalorian. The armor wears the similar horns on her helmet that the Mandalorians once did that we see in the Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels as well. So referring back to my theory onto the regards of who the other spies of this episode could have been, into the regards of the title of this episode besides Elia Kane, maybe the armor could have been the one that set the Mandalorians up for all of this. And I also would like to mention that we do see Moff Gideon wearing these horns of a Mandalorian helmet here as well. This is something else that we had also discussed and talked about here on the channel nearly 6+ months ago. So into the regards of leaks and rumors and theories and news for the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, and to see that actually happen is beyond cool. I also mentioned our reaction video here on the channel into the regards of this episode. If you don't like me at my episode 6 of this season, my worst, then you don't deserve me at my episode 7, my best of The Mandalorian Season 3. This year, and the return of Moff Gideon has to be my most favorite episode of this season here. This episode has to be an instant 10 out of 10 for me, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the finale. Next week, we'll be talking about it, discussing it. I'll have a number of different theories here on the channel. We're in a Star Wars high, we're in a Star Wars hype here, and we're talking about all of it, so it's all the more reason to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and join us here on the channel today. Guys, I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What did you guys think here about this episode of The Mandalorian? Your overall initial thoughts, your reaction, your overall theories at that there as well. I would love to hear what you guys all think in the comment section down below. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. This has been Unofficial Star Wars. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.